Good evening, Mayor Gardner, members of the City Council. My name is Marty Meserve. I live at 708 Berry Street. And pardon me, I may go 3.5 minutes. There has been overwhelming public interest in this issue. Despite the fact that Council has indicated it was surprised by the response, there is no excuse for the lack of information provided by the city to help the citizens work through the pros and cons of changing the date of the election to November. At best, we have received garbled messages based on anecdote rather than fact, and have been presented with so many different versions of the ordinance that we don't know what to focus on. The League of Women Voters did a study in 2001 that examined the election day issue. I'd like to summarize that study, as it is all the public currently has explaining the possible consequences of a date change. I am not speaking officially for the League, but have their blessings, and would like to thank them for making this study available. The League's study summary chart details the following possible consequences of moving local elections to November. And I'd like to note that Fairfax County currently elects its local officials in November and has faced some of these issues. I cannot speak to how they handled them. 1. The city would achieve budgetary savings and workload reductions. The registrar has indicated that the cost savings would be around $9,000 annually, I believe. The electoral board and poll workers would find their workload reduced. Number 2, the city would have longer and possibly more complex ballots. There is the possibility of voter confusion, longer lines, and increased time in voting, as local elections will be sharing the ballot with state and federal elections, plus bond issues and constitutional amendments. Number 3, new council members would take office in the middle of a fiscal year, and new school board members would take office in the middle of a school year. Currently, local elected officials take office on July 1st and have time to get familiar with the budget before being thrust into making major budget decisions. Number 4, more citizens would participate in city council and school board elections, since traditionally more people turn out to vote in November than in May. Although greater voter turnout is a worthy goal, some say that these voters aren't necessarily interested in local issues over the state and federal ones. Just as some council members are concerned that low voter turnout in May gives disproportionate weight to fewer voters, so a higher voter turnout of people who generally don't bother to vote in May would give a different cohort a disproportional weight in determining the election outcome in November. So there is no magic bullet there to understand. Number 5, there is a risk that the nonpartisan nature of our local elections will be lost as national parties either endorse or support candidates. Although this is a risk in May, there are no national or state partisan elections at that time, so there is less opportunity for national parties to get involved or for candidates to be tested as to their party loyalty. Number 6, local issues would be combined with state and national campaigns, with the risk of local issues being overshadowed by state and national ones. There is concern that local issues would be lost in the noise and activity and media attention afforded the state and national issues. The next issue is not mentioned in the League report, but I believe that it is also one that could be a consideration, and that is number 7. It will be more expensive for candidates to run in November, given that they will be competing with state and national campaigns for voters' attention and will need to ramp up their election activities. A case can be made for either election date. What I think is clear, however, is that in May the election is entirely focused on local issues. It is ironic that fewer people choose to vote in May, given that the local government's decisions are the ones that impact the voters' daily life and activities much more significantly than do state or national decisions. Perhaps what Council should be focused on is how to generate more interest in local elections, rather than shunting them off to a time when local issues risk taking a back seat to state and national ones. If that doesn't work, Council can always switch to November sometime in the future. In any case, I believe that the decision of whether or not to change our election date is one that should be done after research, education, and debate. It should not be made by 4 people in a haze of competing proposals over the holiday season. Indeed, the city attorney notes that the date of 2012, which was what was suggested in the ordinance that was given first reading, doesn't need action until 2011. There is no compelling need to rush this decision. Thank you very much. And I do have copies of the League Voter Services study that I will leave on the table for anyone in the audience who would like to pick one up. Thank you very much.
Marty, I just have a quick question. Did the League report make any differentiation between odd years and even years? Is it the even years or when the national elections are and the odd years being when the state issues were?
It did note what offices were up for election in the odd versus the even years. Yes.
Make a difference between impact or how local elections might do either in the odd years with the state or in the even years with the national. It just kind of puts them together.
Taking no position, it's just pointing out what the facts are.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.